Foundation's page here, and we are live today at 5:30. It's 21st of June 2022, and wishing all of you a very happy International Yoga Day. The entire India is celebrating Yoga Day today, and today we are going to talk and discuss about a very interesting topic with all of you, for which we have a very esteemed guest with us today. And I wouldn't call a guest because deAsra Foundation is working very closely with the Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship, and today we have Dr. Sriparna Barua from IIE. Doctor, welcome for today's discussion.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And we also have Namrata, from deAsra Foundation, who holds, a lot of, responsibilities at deAsra Foundation, including, working with Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship and the project that deAsra is working on. So, let me just quickly introduce Dr. Sriparna ji, who is, a very experienced development professional. And she has a really huge career in this sector. Her experience in management, education, and MSME sector is really wide. So she is heading the Center of Industrial Extension in IIE, as well as she has extensive experience in research, consultancy, and she's been a guide to many academic institutions across India. And especially her work in the northeastern part of India. For entrepreneurship and especially women entrepreneurship has been a huge contribution, for and really a pride for all of our India. So thank you so much, Sriparna ji, for joining in, and we are really curious to learn about your work, as well as II's project that is ongoing. Along with that, how IIE looks at this entire ecosystem of entrepreneurship, and how deAsra Foundation and IIE is working together. So just to set the stage for today's discussion, I would like to have a question for Dr. Sriparna ji, that, IIE has been, working in this field for long years. In today's time, in 2022, how is IIE thinking about the entire ecosystem of entrepreneurship and MSME?
That's a wonderful question to start with. I think a much needed question. Entrepreneurship today is quite different from what it was even 5 years back, particularly if I look at Northeast. I think it's happening pan-India, because today entrepreneurship as a career choice has become often a first choice for a lot of youth, which is very encouraging. Even a decade back, it was always, maybe if nothing happens, particularly I'm talking about the region from which I come from, Northeast. It was only if I didn't have any other option, then maybe I can possibly become an entrepreneur. But this trend is changing. So that's with that trend changing, all of us have to look at entrepreneurship really seriously. As to how much we are always saying that in India the opportunity lies at the bottom of the pyramid. So right now, when we have professionals, when we have informed people coming and looking at entrepreneurship, then we actually have people solving problems at the grassroots, and that's where development can start happening. So as an institution, we are trying to have that perspective, very focused perspective on that. Because we do a lot of grassroots projects, and whatever grassroots projects we are doing, trying to connect startups to these grassroots projects. Then possibly a group of social entrepreneurs for lesser developed regions like ours can actually come in. So if I would very briefly touch upon, that's the outlook that we have for entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. And Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship has been instrumental in various domains of education, mentorship, and working at the grassroots level, as Dr. Sriparna ji mentioned. I would come to Namrata, and Namrata, deAsra Foundation partners with lots of different kinds of entrepreneurship partners, and in that we have networks of entrepreneurs. We have a support system enablers for entrepreneurs, as well as we have a great partner like IIE, right? So you have been part of the project that deAsra is running for IIE. So what is this project that deAsra is working with IIE, and how's your experience been?
Sure, great. Thank you, Anand. Yeah, a much needed question to directly touch upon what we are exactly doing in this field. So the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship had taken an initiative to develop the temple towns and the economy is, or the temple economies, which had been affected highly due to, say, pandemic or due to natural calamities. And so the businesses there had been slightly gone down, the incomes had been affected, and the entire economy and the life cycle of the businesses or that town was wholly dependent on these temple economies. So the MSDE took a very great initiative, and IIE is one of the nodal agency who is implementing these, that initiative of them. So they have taken 6 temple towns, typically Haridwar, Varanasi, Bodh Gaya, Jagannath Puri, Kollur, and Pandharpur in Maharashtra. So the development of the small businesses in and around this economy and in and around these regions is being taken care of. And thus deAsra is working in the capacity of the knowledge partner along with Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship to provide them with all the support that is needed virtually as the knowledge partners with whatever experience we have gained in and around the urban region. We are trying to replicate and create models. So this has been a pilot from the MSD side, and the pilot we are trying to replicate, while going along with IIE. So that is what the project is about, and that is deAsra's association with IIE in the capacity of the knowledge partners.
Great, Namrata, thanks for that. And temple towns. So I have a little bit of a basic question, and this is for all those listeners and audience who are on our deAsra Foundation's page. So when you say temple towns and businesses in temple towns, what kind of businesses are these? And so just as curiosity.
Yeah, sure. So, whenever you visit any temple place, that has moreover become a tourist place as well as a devotional place even today. So there are places like Jagannath Puri's typical experience, because deAsra was a partner in Jagannath Puri also. It was more of Haldi Kumkum business, agarbatti manufacturing business. They sell souvenirs, the photo frames, etc. They sell prasadam. Sand art and applique craft is one of the very known businesses in Jagannath Puri. So in an aligned businesses. But surprisingly in Kollur, and I'm sure Shriparna ji will agree to my fact, the economy in Kollur was much different than what we'd sort of envisioned earlier that what a temple town could be. So our experience working there was tremendously good. And we were fortunate that along with the temple businesses, we also got an opportunity to work with the allied businesses which are in that town. So Kollur is not a very big place. It's a small town place. It's really a holy town, as it is mentioned in all of those communications which come from the ministry also. So there are tailoring, fashion, apparel makings from these small self-help groups, then backyard poultry, nursery buildings. So these are the kinds of businesses. And yes, homestays, hotel hotel and restaurant businesses, lodges are the next set of businesses which work well. So yeah, having worked with these two typical towns, the diversity in businesses has been, the type of businesses has been great, but our experience also enriched because of having worked with so many businesses. So these are the businesses typically there.
Great. And India is very rich with culture, and every specific place comes with a background, different businesses in different sectors, geographically diverse areas, and that way, if you actually look at India, it's a very diverse place. And in today's time, I also see that globally, India is looked at for its culture, traditions, and various other culturally diverse things. Shriparna ji, I have a question for you in this regard. You have represented and been part of lots of international delegations, right? And while we look at Indian small businesses, what kind of power does this Indian small business have in the entire economy? What's your experience?
If you look at small businesses, our small business has been mostly really small. So there would be a problem always in the supply chain. While the demand side, there is a demand, but when it comes to supply, in terms of volume, in terms of maintaining quality, there's always been a challenge, which is why the small scale sector, if you look at world over, that has evolved through the cluster approach. So the cluster is where we are creating common facilities in terms of technology, in terms of design intervention, in terms of quality assurance, and where we have people involved in small sector, people involved in similar activities and clustered around a particular area. So that is the approach which almost all the countries developed, lesser developed countries have, we have made a lot of success stories in that line. So India has been focusing on that. And as an institute, we right now have about 70 such MSME clusters where we are working. And that is, the challenges are getting resolved through the cluster intervention. Particularly when we look at small, in lesser developed regions, it will be mostly in the handloom, handicraft, and the food sector. When we look at handloom, handicraft, and the food, definitely a common set of technology, etc., which a small entrepreneur normally cannot invest. So these challenges, to a large extent, gets resolved through this cluster approach. Of course, in states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, etc., with the automobile, etc., those clusters have come in such areas. But here, majority of the smaller states, it would be, lesser developed states, it would be that. So it's the cluster approach, and we have experimented, done, and we've actually have our own lessons through which a lot of, success stories have been created.
Great. That's amazing to hear. And with this whole cluster approach, I'm sure that connecting and networking between these businesses put together also has a great potential of what we are seeing as the supply chain. And so geographically diverse situations that are in India also sometimes act as a strength over here. Right. That typically a mango sellers cluster here in Konkan and Goa region, is one cluster. So all of them put together has a great potential to supply. And you go to any other place, like we are talking about temple towns, we are talking about various clusters. So Dr. V, I have a question about when we talk about cluster development, right? So how does a small entrepreneur, or what should the perspective, or what should be the mindset of an entrepreneur to be part of this cluster and be part of a collective development process?
Firstly, the mindset has to be that is to collaborate and compete. That is the mindset which has to come in. And for that mindset to come in, it normally will not come in because people are very, very, they would like to have their ideas to themselves. They don't like to share. So herein comes a role of institution like ours, or any other development institution, which works a lot on that mindset and the capacity building of these small entrepreneurs. So social mobilization and making an effort for them to come and work as a group, and instilling the confidence that the market is so large that if you collaborate, you can even get a larger chunk of it. You don't have to be scared that your share of market will go. So that mindset building becomes very important.
Absolutely. And that's an absolutely great learning, because competition and collaboration, when going hand in hand, it actually helps excel for the entrepreneur to move forward individually, as well as connect with others to be able to cater to larger needs. So Namrata, coming to you, deAsra has an approach of ecosystem development and using technology for that, right? So deAsra helps in creating resources for businesses to go online, to have social media marketing, to have digital marketing, to have compliances, and so many things in one place. So I have a question. So working with Templetown or working with the business owners of Templetown, how exactly are these business owners, entrepreneurs looking at technology, looking at going online, looking at this changed world of business in today's time?
Thanks, Anand, for this question. If you wouldn't have asked this question, I would have, deliberately stated something on this because it was one of many pleasant experiences of all of us who had visited Kollur. Um, they are, and typically talking about Kollur right now, as I said, it is a very small town in the outskirts of Karnataka. It is very far from a big district place like Udupi. Then comes Kundapura town place, and then it's a town there. But having spoken to the people there, the women there, we really understood that they are technologically adaptable and they are ready for going into technology. Surprisingly, the people there, the restaurant owners there, who were women, few of them were women, they were aware of the terminologies like search engine optimizations, Google Ads, Google Analytics, listing themselves on Make My Trip, listing themselves on Go, and they wanted us to help them in these kind of things. So, answering your question directly, how are they ready for technology? They are extremely ready. They have made them their mindsets also so our efforts started beyond that, and then it was rather a challenge for us to be able to provide visibility to that town, and that is something we've collaboratively taken into consideration. It might be completed into the duration of project, but it might extend, but the intention is to really provide them with the visibility that they are ready to be showcased for. That's a very important, and they were really ready to say that, okay, you develop a platform for us. Somebody from our ecos, or the ladies there or the Janes there will kind of manage that website, but at least you all give us that push start in the beginning. So yes, they are ready to go for technologies like WhatsApp, Google My Business, or even have get themselves onboarded onto any of these aggregator platforms. So to answer your question, they are absolutely technologically ready. It is just a matter of supporting them and giving them the clear direction as in what will work for their kind of businesses. And that is exactly what we are trying to do for all of those interventions. I will come to it gradually, but looking at the type of interventions and the type of businesses there, we are trying to see what kind of appropriate technology platform would be good for them, so that they have a great visibility for their products and their services.
Amazing, and it's a really great thing to hear about this, and we have seen this across India, where smallest of the shop owners today are receiving payments digitally. They are actually coming on to all of these platforms. They are being proactive to sell their products online, right? And there's so many things that are happening in the digital world, and it was quite fast that we adapted to all of these things, especially during the COVID period.
That's correct.
Right?
During
So
the pandemic.
yeah, and the digital side of business, as well as what is happening offline, in the vicinity of Templetown specifically, I think the speed at which this change took place was pretty fast, and yet
Because they were the most impacted and affected
Yes.
people. So rather than us, it was a need of an hour for them
Exactly.
to get adapted to something which was not initially their primary focus, So because the temple town, as I said, when I started my discussion, it is more of a tourist place also. And that side of people was affected, impacted the most, and they got recovered the last, because temple places were the last to get opened even during pandemic. So they had to adapt themselves to technology, and okay, that something's happened for good. So this was one of a great significant change in their mindsets also.
Right. Doctor, I would come to you on this, that the entire perspective has changed and we have moved to online digital world. So IIE as an institution, how are we looking at the changed approach of mentorship, changed approach of changing needs? I mean, even the needs of the businesses have changed, and something that took really long time, today might happen very quickly, but the challenges also would change eventually going forward, right? So as a mentor, what do you think while you are guiding these small businesses?
I think we need to go digitally, that is for sure. And there is no other way out. And this pandemic has been in some way a facilitator for everyone to adapt, to realize that without that you are nowhere. So I think at all levels, people have realized that. So I think that is going to make things much easier. And that is where I think platforms like deAsra become very useful, because once you put it, well, you start quantifying things. And the moment you start quantifying and giving, numbers to what has been your outcome and when everything, otherwise everything remains qualitative. And that's a realization, I think, which has come to institution like ours. I mean, it's really something which has been a realization, and the sooner we adapt to it, the better it will be for the entire ecosystem. That's a realization. In fact, if you talk about Kollur, where I have personally worked with Namrata, Vaishali, etc., and I have seen that so far, even certain times when we were not looking at, we're saying outcome, we're not defining outcomes so very clearly. Because when you talk about social mobilization, when you talk about capacity building, it often ends at you have created awareness. But when you try to quantify that, that makes a huge difference to how you're looking at the entire process. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, and completely makes sense in terms of how we are looking at accountability and how we are looking at these outcome numbers, where the growth of business is only possible when these cash flows are maintained really well, and the sustainability entirely depends on the financial strengths of these business owners. So finally, to be able to create jobs, and finally to be able to strengthen this small business, deAsra's mission, as we call it, that we want more and more number of people to actually create jobs, right? And the entrepreneur's confidence, entrepreneur's mindset plays a crucial role in this entire setup. And a collective effort like this, what IIE and the deAsra Foundation is doing, that is where I think reaching out to a great number of entrepreneurs directly and being able to serve their needs is one of the major outlooks that this collaboration has set a stage for. So coming to the applications of such models being created, meaning deAsra and I are working on this model, and we will have our learnings. Where all do you see, Dr. Sriparnaji, the implications or applications of such models being designed across India? And what are the opportunities to scale this model going further?
I think there would be a huge opportunity for scaling this model. Number one is, as Kollur, as Namrata has very clearly said, Kollur, the experience was different. It's a very small temple town. So there would be a lot of similar small temple towns. As it is, a lot of economic activity happens around any temple. And we were not looking possibly so far as temple towns also being an entrepreneurial ecosystem. That is some thought process which was, I mean, no one had looked at it from that angle. Definitely some enterprises start happening. So if we have a structured approach as to how we look at small temple towns, we're looking at building our model out of the learnings of Kollur. So this, which can be replicated elsewhere, rest of India and smaller temple towns. Puri becomes a different, but that was the first of the, that was the first experience we had. We've learned more as we went to Kollur. I think these lessons would be really useful. And I personally feel that, we are talking about MSMEs collaboration. We also here have to look at institutional collaboration, draw upon each other's strengths, because I think we need to draw upon the strength of deAsra And organization, institution like ours, if they realize that we can, draw upon what your strengths are, the impact would be really large.
Right, right. Absolutely. And I think the three T's of tradition, tourism, and technology coming together, can really create wonders. Because India is a traditionally rich country, and also geographically diverse. So the applicability is really high, and institutional collaborations, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
That's
because
that's
coming back from this Kollur experience, I have already tweaked the concept note and given it to the government of Assam that can we do something for Kamakya temple.
yeah.
So where we, instead of looking at it as a project, and we do a need analysis, come back, do us what interventions are required. So we even have learnings from this, the approach that we had taken, and possibly there would be a lot of outcomes coming out like that.
Absolutely great. So, Namrata, coming to you, I would like you to throw a little bit of light in short span of time about which of all the resources of deAsra were specifically relevant for a Temple Town project, and what are deAsra resources, just for the benefit of audience who might not be aware of what deAsra resources are on the portal www.deasra.in.
Sure, Anand, thank you. So looking at the type of interventions we sort of supported in Kollur, deAsra is keenly looking forward and looking towards the support of providing market access to market, access to funds. That is something we really tried hard in Kollur, and we are still trying. So for the fashion and apparel manufacturing units, we are trying to provide them with forward linkages, and there is where we are connecting them with various partners. We are trying to connect them with aggregator platforms and online e-commerce platforms like TailorSmart. Amazon Saheli was one of them with whom we are working. So we were trying to see if they can be of help to them. Then apart from that, for the backyard poultry thing, we have our business plans and business proposals, the small project proposals, which are very essential for these small businesses, because looking at the size and the scale of a backyard poultry, they really do not require all your heads in a typical project proposal. They require something which is very minimal, which talks about the yield, the eggs, the hatchery, etc. So we had kind of developed that. We already had it as in the pool of resources. So we sort of repurposed it there, so which can be filled upon and which can be taken to any of the financial institutions. Apart from that, for the hoteliers, we tried and saw that we get them set up on Google My Business. We are also looking at a program on WhatsApp for Business for these typical hoteliers and restaurant owners, which will kind of help them understand how WhatsApp can be used, how is it important, and how will it help to increase the sales and revenue. So as Riparnaji correctly pointed out or coined, this time all the efforts have been put on looking at the outcome of it, that how many people get access to market, how many people get access to funds, how many we help to increase their revenues, increase their cash flows, and how many, in general, set their businesses. So rather than looking at outputs, we are all our energies of everyone, IIE, deAsra, and the partners working on ground also have been focused clearly upon looking at the outcomes of the business. Apart from that, yes, there are some tools, templates on the deAsra portal, which could have been useful, but looking at the size of their businesses, we thought a facilitation-led mode was more important to them. So we are kind of driving it through the facilitation-led mode.
Great. So deAsra's activities, like in groups and also expert consultations individually, and there are so many things that deAsra keeps doing, awareness programs, and reaching out to newer cohorts. I think working with Temple Towns has been a great experience for deAsra Foundation as well. So Sriparnaji, coming towards the end of this discussion, learning from this entire Temple Town project of Kollur, what we did in Puri, and now what we will be doing as IIE deAsra collaboration. What is the key message that you would want to give to the entrepreneurs who are watching us?
I would say that, entrepreneurs need to look at how they can be facilitated to come to certain outcomes, and what is anything that they're
Thanks a lot, and we will continue these discussions going forward, and share the learnings and observations with everyone, for us to be able to reach the last mile. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Namrata. Thanks, Shri Parnaji, and see you all again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See you.